we're going to continue with our back to the basics today. So what are resources within IMC? A resource is basically a switch, a router, wireless controller. In some cases, users are resources as well. So we'll look at that a little bit later. So first off, you need to discover them. So we'll look at that really quickly. And more than anything, the best advice I can possibly give you is click on those little blue links. They will reveal hidden secrets and mysteries of the world. Let's take a look. So here we are on the IMC homepage, and you can already see we've got a whole bunch of things discovered in here. We've got these resources. Again, we've got switches, routers, we have virtual devices, wireless, SDN controllers, desktops, others, all this stuff. But first we have to get them in the system. So how do we do that? Well, you can go through and you can click on the resource and go to add device. You can maybe add singularly, probably not that efficient. So the best way to get them originally into the system is auto discovery. And we've got a bunch of auto discoveries. By default, you'll go to basic. You probably want to go to advanced, which is up here on the right. And then we've got routing based. So this will use your routing protocols. Log into your devices, you give it a seed device, and we'll span out from there. We've got ARP based, IPsec VPN based, network segment based, which is the most common, and that's what you'll be using probably 99% of the times. Right? So we go into here, we give it the network segment that you want to be able to discover, and then the system does all the work for you. If you're really organized, you can actually import the devices directly from a CSV file. And there's a lot of advantages to doing that. Very deterministic. I'm a big fan of that, but not many people are that organized. Once you've got them discovered, automatically IMC will go through and will classify all those devices. So we have over almost 7,000 devices modeled in the system. So your discovery should be pretty much taken care of. And then we go through and we start looking at these individual devices. So again, all your routers belong in the router category. And we can go in and look at this HP MSR 930. So you can see here, as you drill down, you get more and more and more detailed. So think of these as a bunch of filters. All your devices into routers, into this MSR. We go to this MSR, and that's all the details about this particular MSR router. Trap destinations, who it's actually sending SNMP traps for, which is going to be critical for alarms, right? And we'll look at that in a future video. Configuration management. What code is running? Have you backed it up? Those kinds of things. We'll look at that in a future video. Access information. So in my case, we've actually got UAM, the User Access Manager, in here. So we're performing centralized authentication on this router, so I could see if there was anyone logged into it, right? I can go in and look at the assets. I can even go down to all these other links here and modify things. Look at the interfaces. We'll look at that in just a couple of seconds. But before we go on to that, I want to show you some of the other things over here on the right-hand side. These are actions that apply specifically to this device, right? So in this case, we're doing protocol management for OSPF because that's what I have turned on this device. I can go through. I can look at the area ID, the authentication type for this area ID. Is it an ABR or an ASBR? I can look at the link state database and look at all the information for the LSDBs that this actual router is seeing as part of its OSPF process. All the network links, what's the LSID, who is advertising it. Again, a ton of information here. Device information, IPv6, port mode, ARMON, port aggregation, or Ether channel in Cisco speak. VLAN information, configuration management pieces. Again, take your time to look through these. There's a lot of information in here, and you could be pleasantly surprised. So now let's look at the system as far as the interfaces, right? We can go through, again, another level, drilling down into this device. We can see we've got VLAN interfaces here and the IP address. We've got this interface link type, and this is actually coming from the topology, from the discovery mechanism. So I actually know these particular links, gig 00 and 01, are connected to another SNMP device, a device that's been discovered using SNMP. And then we can drill down into this particular interface, and we can see the interface description. We can see all the current performance characteristics of this device if we're monitoring and have turned those on. Right, so that's kind of critical. We can see the description, we can see the alias, the management status. We've got, again, actions on the right-hand side. I could down the interface here. I'm not going to do that because I would actually kill my connection to the device. Important to remember these things. And then I've got interface management where I can go in and actually look at, okay, the interface IP. I could delete this. I could add this if I wanted. Again, caution. Use caution. You don't want to kill connections to your device. And I can click on the port properties and start looking at the different port properties. I could change administrative status from here. Right? I can change the port alias. So let's do something link to WAN or WAN link. You know, again, hopefully you guys have got a naming convention here. Naming conventions are critical to make sure that you have consistency throughout your entire system. Right? That's one of the most important things, operationally speaking, is that you come up with a plan and you follow the plan. We've got configured rate here. And configured rate, as you can see, I've got all the way up to 100 gig. Obviously, that's not going to work on this box because this is a 1 gig box. And the system will actually complain at you if you try to do something like that. So we're going to change the interface alias here and click OK. So port configured successfully. We're going to close this down. Now, you can see here that that didn't change, right? So I got to do a refresh, and it still didn't change. Well, why is that? That's because we haven't synchronized the device. So when we made that change, we actually made it live on the device, and now we have to tell IMC to go and capture the new state of that particular device. It would happen automatically within the polling period, which is about 5 minutes. But if we want to force it to happen, we can do that now. So the next thing we're going to look at is custom views. And custom views is just a way of organizing your resources. Okay? So we've got a whole bunch of different custom views here for different branches. You could have these for closets. You could have these for geographical regions, for country regions. Again, this is really going to be based around however you decide to manage and operate your network. So there's no wrong answer here. This one you can see we got a single Cisco switch in here. So let's look at something a little more interesting. Let's look at the WAN topology, where I have a bunch of routers and switches in here. So what's really nice is I can automatically, from the same list, click on the topology button up here in the right-hand corner, and now I have a view of how these things are actually connected. Right? I've got routers, I've got switches, and you can see that very obvious from the icons. And if I left-click, I will get information for this particular switch. Right? So I can see it's a Cisco switch, I can see the CPU utilization, I can see all sorts of information there. And if I right-click, I will get actions. I can see, you know, maybe configure the spanning tree for that device. I could put a remark on it. I could change the QoS parameters. I could create a performance view directly from here. There's a whole bunch of different information that can be very, very useful to you to have at the tip of your fingers. Again, feel free to investigate and play. We've also got the link management. So what's really nice here is we provide a really easy to view table of exactly what you're seeing as far as which links on which devices are connected and how they're connected, right? So that's information that's extremely valuable. So the last thing we're going to look at is port groups. As far as resources, there's a whole bunch of other things we could go into, but I want to give you guys the quick overview. So resources, I've got storage ports, I've got WAN ports, and what a port group is I have taken all of the WAN ports from all of those routers that we were looking at, and I have put them in this particular view. So I've created a view that will allow me to see all the device labels and the speeds, and once I've got these as a grouping, I can then add a performance view directly from here as well. So I'm going to have to select one instance, add performance view. There should be a box here. Why is there not a box? Well, look at that. Always allow pop-ups. So now we have some browser funniness happening. This is going to be really common for you to run into as well. So always, if you click on something, you expect a box to come up, and it doesn't come up, make sure you go up and look at that browser bar to see if there's an X blocking pop-ups of some kind. Right, so I'm going to go in and add performance view again here. No, so apparently Chrome is actually doing some funniness. So we're going to go back in, refresh the page completely. We're going to click more, add performance view, and look at that, just like magic. So be aware that just because you see some funniness, sometimes that's the browser, right? It's kind of normal. Don't get too upset about it. It's the world we live in. So click next. Those are all the indexes, the SNMP indexes that we're monitoring on these devices, and I'm going to add this to this particular performance view. We're going to put a name in for this performance view, and a performance view is the pretty graphs that you all expect to see. So once we're done creating this particular performance view, you got trend line or data grid. You've got your options here. The access rights is for who can actually view them, And you can see here, it has been successfully created. Click close. So the very last thing that we're going to look at now is the performance views. So I would have gotten to this over on the left-hand side, performance management. So you can see here the WAN port, 64 instances in here. And now you can see we've got all the graphs. These are exportable as different PDF, CSV, Excel, all the above. And you can see here, even though I just created this performance view, I've actually got that historical information. I can go to yesterday, this week, I can go last week, I can look at this month. So this really gives you the ability to go back in time and really see what the status of your network has been over time. You can see in some cases I've got no data, so I've got something to investigate there, and we'll look at that later. But right now, maybe I'm interested in one of these other routers. I don't know. Maybe I don't actually like the view that I'm looking at, which is the interface receiving. Right, maybe I want to look at something different. So let's pull this down here so you can see this. So I'm looking at the interface receiving, transmitting. Maybe I want to look at the broadcast rate. Right, I want to see if I've got some chatty boxes out there doing a ton of broadcasts and consuming all my bandwidth. Look at that. Now the view has changed, and again, I've got 0 packets being broadcast from this particular router, which it's a lab environment, and I don't think there's anything behind there, so that's normal. In this case, I've got it's receiving some broadcasts. Again, just good information to have. You know, nice reports to be able to see. So the last thing we're going to look at here is the network assets. And this, I can't undersell how important network assets is, especially when you have devices that are under support contracts or they die in the field, you've got remote locations. It's really nice to have a centralized place to know where all your serial numbers are, right? And so what we do this for multi-vendor devices. We do this for our own devices, as well as Cisco devices, as well as any vendor device who does the serial number in a standard way, which is using the SNMP entity MIB. So I'm going to click on the query button here, and I'm going to be able to see that anything that starts with 10.101.01, so I know the IP address. So imagine you're in a situation where your router has just died, and you need to open up a case with Cisco TAC, and they say, "What's your serial number?" And you have no idea. It's far away. So you can go into the IMC system, and you're going to be able to go and look at this particular device and see that its model serial number is actually FHK 111.9F1DX. But what about the other things in that box? Well, you've got other serial numbers that are actually part of this particular router, and you want to make sure that all of those are covered as well. So I can go down and I can look at the actual 40 gig hard drive in here, or I can go up and look at the actual NM module here, which in my case is a Cisco Unity Express module. Right, so we've got the daughter card, Cisco, there's the serial number. And there we are, NMSE, NMQ, so that's a network module, Cisco Unity Express, and there's the serial number for this particular unit. Again, I can also put in additional information like the maintainer contact info, so if you've got that information, the physical asset tracking number, your asset number, all that is available as one central place to hold all of this information. Again, can't stress how important this is from an operational standpoint. And that brings us to the close of working with resources. Again, click around, click on those little buttons. See you guys next time on the next IMC management tutorial.